Machiavellian describes someone sneaky, manipulative, and maybe a bit ruthless. Right, but is that a fair picture of the man behind the term Niccolò Machiavelli? Today, we're rediving into the life and mind of one of history. Most misunderstood thinkers to find out who he really was and what he actually believed. Born in Florence, Italy, in 1469, Machiavelli grew up during the Renaissance, a golden age of art and culture, but also a time of intense political chaos. Italy wasn't a single country, but a patchwork of warring cities, constantly shifting alliances and dealing with invasions from powerful neighbors like France and Spain. This turbulent environment was Machiavelli's classroom. He came from a respectable but not wealthy family, which meant he had to work his way up. And he did. In his late 20s, he landed a major job as a senior diplomat for the Florentine Republic. For 14 years, he was at the heart of the action, traveling on missions, meeting kings, popes, and generals. He saw firsthand how power was won, used, and lost. He observed the brutal realities of politics, where good intentions often led to disaster and ruthlessness sometimes brought stability. One figure who made a huge impression on him was Cesare Borgia, the ambitious and often brutal son of Pope Alexander VI. Machiavelli watched Borgia carve out a state for himself through a combination of strategic violence, clever diplomacy, and sheer force of will. While he was horrified by Borgia's cruelty, he was also fascinated by his effectiveness. Here was a leader who got things done, no matter the cost. These observations would become the raw material for his most famous work. But then, everything changed. In 1512, the powerful Medici family, who had been exiled, returned to power in Florence with the help of Spanish troops. The republic Machiavelli had served was overthrown. Because of his high-ranking position in the old government, he was immediately seen as an enemy. He was fired from his job, accused of plotting against the Medici, arrested, and even tortured. After being released, he was banished from Florence and forced into a quiet retirement at his small country estate. Can you imagine the whiplash? One day you're a respected diplomat shaping state policy. The next you're a political outcast with nothing to do. It was during this period of forced exile, feeling frustrated and desperate to get back into politics, that he wrote his most influential books, including The Prince. So, let's talk about The Prince. This short book is essentially a job application in the form of a political guidebook. Machiavelli dedicated it to the new Medici ruler, hoping to prove his expertise and win back a position in the government. He wasn't writing a philosophical treatise about an ideal world. He was writing a practical manual for a real-world ruler on how to gain and maintain power in the messy reality of 16th century Italy. This is where things get controversial. In The Prince, Machiavelli argues that a ruler must be willing to do whatever it takes to secure the state. This includes being deceptive, manipulative, and even cruel if necessary. He famously asked whether it is better for a ruler to be loved or feared. His answer, it's best to be both. But if you have to choose, it's safer to be feared. Why? Because love is fickle. People will turn on you when it suits them, but fear of punishment is a constant motivator. He also separated politics from traditional morality. For centuries, thinkers had argued that a good ruler must be a good Christian, virtuous, honest, and just. Machiavelli threw that idea out the window. He argued that what makes a person morally good doesn't necessarily make a leader effective. A prince who is too kind or too honest will be crushed by his less scrupulous rivals. The ultimate goal of a ruler, he said, isn't to be a saint, but to ensure the survival and prosperity of the state. Decode, this reason, dietat, or reason of state. The state's well-being is the highest good, and any action that serves it is justified. This is why the word Machiavellian came to mean what it does. His advice sounded shocking, even evil, to many. The idea that the ends justify the means became famously associated with him, even though he never actually wrote that exact phrase. What he did say was that a prince must learn how not to be good and use this knowledge when necessity commands. But was Machiavelli really advocating for tyranny? Not exactly. It's crucial to understand his other major work, Discourses on Livy. In this much longer book, he reveals his true political preference. A republic? He believed that a republic, a state governed by its citizens and laws, was far more stable, innovative, and powerful than a principality ruled by a single person. In the discourses, he champions liberty, citizen participation, and the rule of law. So how do we reconcile the ruthless advice in The Prince with the pro-republican ideas in the discourses? Many scholars believe The Prince was a specific handbook for a specific situation, founding a state or saving one from collapse. In times of extreme crisis, he argued, you might need a strong, single ruler with absolute power to bring order from chaos. But once stability is achieved, the best form of government is a republic where power is shared. Think of it this way. The Prince is like an emergency manual for a surgeon in a life-or-death situation. The procedures might be extreme and messy, but they're necessary to save the patient. The discourses, on the other hand, is like a long-term wellness plan for keeping the patient healthy for the rest of their life. Machiavelli was a political realist. He wasn't interested in how people should behave in an ideal world. He was obsessed with how they actually behave in the real one. He saw humans as generally self-interested, fickle, and not always trustworthy. A successful leader has to work with this reality, not pretend it doesn't exist. He was the first major thinker to look at politics in a secular, scientific way, analyzing what works rather than what is morally pure. Unfortunately for him, his plan to get his job back failed. The Medici largely ignored the prince, and he spent the rest of his life writing plays, histories, and poetry, never again holding a significant political office. He died in 1527, a disappointed man. After his death, The Prince was published and immediately caused a firestorm. The Catholic Church put it on its index of prohibited books, and his name became a synonym for evil. But thinkers across the centuries, from Francis Bacon to the American founding fathers, read him closely. They understood that he wasn't just a teacher of evil, but a clear-eyed analyst of power, who had uncomfortable but important things to say. So, the next time you hear the term Machiavellian, remember the man behind it. He wasn't a simple monster whispering evil advice. He was a brilliant, pragmatic, and patriotic man who lived through chaos and tried to figure out how to build a stable and lasting state in an unstable world. He forced us to confront the difficult, often ugly, relationship between power, morality, and necessity. His questions are as relevant today as they were 500 years ago, challenging us to think critically about what it truly takes to lead. Thanks for watching. If you found this dive into Machiavelli's world interesting, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most fascinating minds. See you next time.